Today, let's talk about AdWords campaign experiments for advanced PPC managers. And if you've ever been wondering how to use that little feature in AdWords that gets presented to you every time you go and change the settings on your campaigns, you are in the right place. AdWords campaign experiments is a great way to lower your CPA and also increase conversions in a really systematic way. And also, it's a great way to validate your best practices and also test Google's own suggestions that they give you when you look in the opportunities tab, or that they give you when you look at your uh, uh, when they give you suggestions for how you can raise your bids up or down. AdWords campaign experiments is a great tool for doing both of those things. Also, it's a great tool for impressing your clients and your bosses. When they know that you're using a tool that allows you to test and experiment in a systematic way, instead of just spewing out a best practice and not really explaining why you made this change or that this change really brought value, you actually impress your more skeptical clients and bosses. So we're going to go through all of that and get into real nitty gritty on how to use AdWords campaign experiments. And because this is an advanced training, I'm not going to go over how to click every button or how to set it up in the first place. You can actually find that in books. You can find that in some books. You can find that in the help documentation. But what's missing from all those things is how to use the tool. And that's what we're going to go over. Some best practices, things that I've learned from trial and error. I'm going to show you how to do those things with AdWords campaign experiments so that instead of taking weeks and weeks and weeks to learn how to use it properly, you'll learn how to use it properly in the half hour that you spend with me, and you'll be off to the races, getting more conversions, lower CPAs, impressing your clients and bosses, and everything I just promised a few minutes ago. So the inspiration, part of the inspiration for having this presentation, this hangouts on air today, is from someone who's in the Google Partners community on Google Plus. His name is Kevin Park. He says, "Can anyone plan a hangout session for AdWords experiments? I've tried implementing the feature myself, and I don't know what to make of the data. There aren't as many help and best practice resources on the topic. When I reached out to Google, I had to go through 3 different people to find one who knew it well enough to explain it step by step. Does anyone else feel there should be more help with the experiments feature?" And Kevin posted this back in October 2014. And Google hasn't had any like hangouts about this topic. They don't really post blog posts about it. A lot of experts in our space, they ignore hangouts on air. I mean, they ignore campaign experiments, ACE for short. But my name is Hashim Warren, and I stumbled upon the feature one day, and I asked the guy who was teaching me AdWords a couple of years ago, "Hey, can we use ACE to kind of test out some of the things that were changing in our AdWords campaigns?" And it was the first time he heard of ACE. He's a fantastic PPC manager. Got me started, taught me a lot of what I know, but he had never heard of ACE before. And and even some of the other folks that I've dealt with haven't heard of ACE. But anyway, I stumbled upon it, and I've been getting great results for clients because of it. 37 and 47, 37% higher conversions for a client, with 47% higher traffic for that client. And this is for a client that didn't allow us to use landing pages, didn't allow us to do any lead capture. Well, not lead capture, but lead nurture. Um, Specifically because of ACE, I was able to bring a client CPA down from $136 to $23, which I'm really proud of. Got featured in the Google Partners community, not because I use ACE, but because I'm trying to be helpful there, because I ask a lot of questions and I try to be supportive. So this hangout on air came because, number one, people were asking for it, and no official person was giving it. Number two, I was getting success from using ACE myself and posting random posts on it in the community, and decided that it was time to kind of bring everything together and make a presentation. And three, because I thought it would be cool. So, like I said, ACE is really disrespected in the PPC AdWords community at large. Like I said, my mentor had not heard about it. One of my favorite books about AdWords, they barely mention it. And even though they mention it and go over it, when the book goes over what your weekly flow should be in terms of managing your AdWords accounts, it's all about kind of best practices and flipping that switch and flipping that switch, and nothing about ACE, nothing about testing the things that only ACE will allow you to test. So books, they disrespect ACE. Experts in the PPC community, they don't write blog posts about ACE. Google itself, Google, this is ACE. I recently had my Google rep create a campaign for me for a client, and he said, okay, let's test this out. Let's see how this will go. And I said, and this is before I started using ACE, but I asked him, how come we don't just set up an AdWords campaign experiment? He's like, I've never done that before. So, so this official representative from Google, who's been trained on the tool, who comes in and he's trying to help me to optimize my campaigns, he said, I don't use ACE. And I was like, okay, that was the impetus for me to start to use it myself, because I really wanted to hold his feet to the fire and just make sure that the campaigns he was creating were actually going to be better than what we already had. So all these different people, they diss ACE. However, and you see right here that ACE has been in beta for 5 years. It was announced over 5 years ago on a Google blog post. And even today, when you go and set up a campaign experiment, they'll say that the feature is in beta. But so I'm going to go over a couple of best practices for using ACE, things that I've used it for and found success. And the first one I want to go over is ACE is really not about the tool. ACE really enables a specific approach that you take with your AdWords account. So my big question for any PPC manager is, are you a mechanic or an engineer? And depending on how you answer this question, I can tell you how you'll use ACE. But before we get into what buttons to press, or before you get into what buttons to press, or even putting together which best practice you're going to follow, you have to ask yourself, are you a mechanic or an engineer? So mechanics, they tinker. Mechanics, they optimize. Mechanics, they make small changes. Mechanics, they make guesses. And that's what a mechanic does. If you are a PPC manager who's a mechanic, then the whole way that you manage your AdWords campaigns is through tinkering. And that's the main way that I've managed my campaigns. I've had success tinkering. I've had success being a PPC mechanic. But recently I decided to switch the way I manage my PPC campaigns now that I have a tool like ACE to help me with this. So now my focus is on being a PPC engineer. And engineers, they test. Engineers are able to build something different than what they're given. When you tinker, all you can do is make a best practice a little bit better. When you're an engineer, you get to create your own best practice that fits specifically with the client that you're working on and the market that they're in and what they're selling and their offer. You create your own model for what works rather than just tinkering with what someone else told you. So tinkering, it gets 3% growth. That's what you celebrate. An ad did 3% better. A campaign did 3% better. 3% better here, 3% better there. You slip back 2%, you gain another 3%, and you're successful. But when you're testing, you can get 3x growth It's a complete difference when you test, when you are actual PPC engineer. So if you are looking to use ACE to be a engineer, you'll have faster success and more success than if you use ACE just to tinker. So, and we're gonna go into more of that, and I'll give you some examples. Now, I said that you'll get 3x growth from being an engineer from using ACE to test. But one case study that Google itself touts when you read on their help document about ACE is from Sear Interactive out of Philadelphia. They delivered a 433% conversion increase at an 80% lower CPA by using ACE, by testing, by using ACE, by having an engineer's kind of mindset about what they can do. So this is really exciting. I read this years ago and never got to use ACE. And now that I've been seeing the biggest, you know, drops in clients' CPAs because of ACE without a drop in conversions, I'm totally converted. I am never managing a PPC campaign or specifically an AdWords campaign anymore without without using ACE. I mean, this is how much it's changed my workflow. I'm upset to have to use other tools, Facebook and other tools to advertise because I'm not able to use a tool like ACE to make sure that this best practice that I'm adopting from someone else or this hunch that I have from looking in the account that will actually, you know, give my client gains. So back when I had tinkered, sometimes I would get gains, but I couldn't lock them in. I remember this one CPA for a campaign that was like stuck at $34, $35. One week I got it down to $17, and I think the conversions went up too. But the next week it went back to 34, and I'm asking like my rep, like, how come I'm reverting to the mean on this one? And part of the problem was I wasn't able to lock in those gains by making sure that the changes I made were giving me a statistically significant increase or decrease. So I have another pro tip for you guys. Test source traffic. This is the unique part of ACE. Like if you use a landing page software that allows you to test, or you've been using AdWords to test ads against each other, you've been testing lower down in the funnel. But when it comes to source traffic, the source of your traffic, it is king when it comes to your conversion rate optimization. Let me explain. I had a client who, I think had something like a 3% conversion rate across the whole site. 3% of the traffic that came to the site, they converted. But when I looked at the traffic source, I saw the biggest variance in terms of conversion rate. So that company, that client had a partner. And on that partner's website, they had a little link that said, if you need this type of help, go to this company. People who visited that link skipped all the other pages on my client's website and signed up for their service. I mean, it was just like made a beeline to the contact form, signed up. The conversion rate was through the roof when it came to that source of traffic. When it came from Pinterest, the conversion rate was much lower. When it came from search, the conversion rate was much higher. And even within that, as you guys probably already understand, different keywords gave us a higher conversion rate. Now, the problem is when you read many conversion rate optimization articles, they don't talk about source of traffic. What they talk about is the CTA or the headline. Or often when you're trying to increase your conversion rate and you're following some PPC best practices, they'll talk about the ads and split testing the ads and having clever ads so you can get a higher click-through rate. But depending on your source of traffic, depending on that placement that you've decided in AdWords, depending on that keyword that you've decided in AdWords, depending on your targeting, one ad can win over another. I had one campaign, I had two campaigns where I used the same tested ads. Two campaigns, same ad copy, same group of ad copy. In one campaign, um, one of the ads was the most popular in terms of click through rate. And in the other campaign, another ad was most popular. So it was like the same ads, very similar keywords that I was using, um, but one was actually search with retargeting, the other was search without retargeting. And so you see that just the change in the targeting makes it so that one ad gets clicked over the other. So how do you know if you're giving yourself high quality traffic? You don't unless you test. So when I changed one of my campaigns using Ace, my conversion rate on my landing page went from about 6% to 20%. And I made zero changes on the landing page. All I changed was the source of traffic. How did I know which traffic was good or better for that landing page? I used Ace to test the source of traffic. So that's one unique part of Ace, the fact that you get to test your targeting, the fact that you get to test your placements, the fact that you get to test your keywords, the fact that you get to test your negative keywords. That's one part of Ace that you really can't do using a lot of other tools. And I recommend that you actually focus on. So my biggest gains have been testing out my bids, how much I'll pay for a source of traffic, and also testing out a specific source of traffic, which is mobile traffic, if folks are using that device. So I've had my biggest leaps in terms of campaigns that way by testing those things. Here's another pro tip for you. Test at the ad group level. So Ace gives you the ability to go within an ad group and test different keywords. Set one as the control, set another as the as experimental. And you'll see that when you go through the help documentation for how to set up Ace. You can also test different placements using Ace within an ad group. But really, I think the best way to use Ace is to clone an ad. If you want to test, let's say, placements in a display network campaign, I think the best way to do it is to take an ad group that you want to make your control, copy that whole ad group, name it something different, same name. I like to write dash experimental and then dash whatever I change, let's say placements, dash experimental dash placements. Go into that experimental ad group, change the placements, add more, less, change the bids on the placements, whatever hunch you have about the placements that you want to change, and then run that ad group as the as the as the experiment. This has several benefits, including it's just easier to understand your results when it's within an ad group. But also, if you want to get fancy, you can actually change many parts of the experience someone gets when they come to your ad. And you can test that experience against another. So instead of just changing the placements, you can also change the targeting and also the keywords and also the ads themselves and have them go to completely separate landing pages with completely separate offers. So you can slide someone down a completely different slide and test that against each other. So it gets really messy, I think, if you're trying to do it within an ad group. But if you have two separate ad groups, it's easier to see, it's easier to test, it's easier to run another test, it's easier to see that your ads did well with the experimental ad group, but maybe the landing pages didn't do so well. And you have to figure out whether whether the whole experience was bad or something within the experience is bad. One of my biggest gains, the one that came from bids, I actually took the bidding suggestions that Google gave me, and I created separate ad groups with all of those bid suggestions. Each one that suggested if I made a bid that was lower, I would get the same amount of conversions. So I tested, about 5 ad groups that were experiments against 5 ad groups that were controls. I let this run until I let this run for a few weeks, and the Google suggested bids totally tanked. Like my my conversions were lower, my CPA was higher, it was bad. But within that, I had winning ad groups. I had some ad groups where they did better. The experiment did better than the control. So I actually enabled all of the ones that did better, and the ones that did worse, I let it go. And I should have had this number right here for you guys, but I believe the at this point this was a drop from 30 something to 20 something in terms of the CPA at that point. So, but my basic point is uh, ACE gives you a lot of different ways that you can, a lot of different levels where you can test at. I suggest testing at the ad group level for many different reasons. So I just talked about how I picked out my wins even in failed experiments. I saw one person in the Google Partners group that said, "Hey, I'm running these experiments, but I just don't feel like I'm getting wins." I don't always get wins from ACE. A win is an experiment that was performed properly, where I got, where I tested out something that was strategic, and also I tested it until I got a statistically significant result. That's a winning experiment. Not that the experiment gave me a gain. So a failed experiment is when I stop it too early, or I make too many changes while the experiment is running, or I experiment with something that didn't matter. And I'll go into that in a minute. So even with failed experiments, analyzing why it failed and what maybe gives you a better experiment next time. And also, there's often wins within those failed experiments. So you can actually pick out the wins and failed experiments. Here's my pro tip number 4: test big changes. Now, before ACE, I was really afraid. I was really fearful to test big changes. This is because I was in a tinkering mindset. Now, if I tinkered and I broke something in my account, then it was hard to get back to it. But with ACE, if the experiment didn't give me a gain, I can just revert back very easily. I don't have to worry about messing things up. So since I don't have to worry about messing things up, because I can revert back so easily, I can test bigger things. I can test I can test a bid that's just way different, way higher, or way lower than my current bid. I can test placements that are more outside of the niche, that, and maybe hopefully they'll work. I can test going against common best practices. I can test having um, not having the same negative keywords that I know my other advertisers are using. This is another test that I did. I saw a lot of my competitors were using a very specific negative keyword that should indicate that this person is not interested in the service. But through a test, I saw that I was getting a good um, I was getting a lot of conversions from them, not necessarily because I had a better offer than the competitors, but because from looking at this ad group, my competitors were not appearing for that search, and my guess is that they were using this negative keyword to stay out of that auction. I'm like, hey, I'm getting a fabulous price on this. I'm able to see that without having to change my whole campaign and tank everything that I've like set up through using ACE. So I suggest testing big changes. Um, Now, if you're worried about testing a big change that you'll waste money because this thing might not work, and the bigger the change, the more it probably won't work. But and on the flip side, the bigger the change, the faster you can get gains. But the bigger the change, if you're afraid of wasting, then don't have a 50-50 experiment, have a 80-20 experiment. Spend just a little of your budget on this experiment. And if you have enough traffic, enough impressions, enough clicks, then you'll still get a result that you can hang your hat on, even if you split test using just 20% of your budget. Now, there was one instance where I used ACE to demand to get Google's attention, to get the help folks, to get their attention, and demand that they give me better service. So I was running a display campaign, but some of my ads weren't showing up on some of my managed placements. So I said, hey guys, what's going on? And they came back and said, well, it's probably your sizes, and also you don't have the right sizes, and your bids are probably too low. I said, nope, I have the right sizes right here, and I'll up my bid. I'll tinker a little bit and up my bid to see if I can get on these other managed placements. A week goes by, nothing. And so I go through the cycle with them about 2 or 3 times where someone's telling me, hey, um, your bids are just simply too low. That's why you're not getting on these managed placements. So I decided to set up an ACE, and I gave my ACE an incredibly high, like over 3 times what the bid should be, what my current bid was for these managed placements. It was just a ridiculous bid. And I saw the results. Thank goodness that my cost per click still didn't go up very high, but I was not on those managed placements. I showed this to the help folks, and they kind of raised it up a level, and they say, you know what? You are using HTML5 ads. Some of those managed placements, they only take image ads, not HTML5 ads. So I actually used ACE to get a better response from the help people after 3-4 weeks of going back and forth with them, without having to up the bid to this crazy level and tank all of my work that I've done to optimize the campaign. So here's ACE pro tip number 5. Start with strategy. Now, I began by telling you that it's better to be an engineer than a mechanic. It's better to test than to tinker. And in order to have a proper test, in order to even know what you should test, you have to start with strategy. And I see too many people that actually build out their AdWords campaigns within AdWords. They don't have any written strategy. They don't know what they're going to do. And what that does is it kind of brings you down a slide where you just basically flip on the defaults for your campaigns, or you miss something when you're building out these campaigns. AdWords is really complicated, and it really takes strategic thinking and work to make sure that you're going in the direction that you want to go. Sometimes you even have a client who's concerned about something they shouldn't be concerned about. They're concerned about the cost per click rather than the return on ad spend, or they're concerned about the return on ad spend rather than their overall profit. And so it's really important that you have a strategy that is written that's outside of AdWords, so you can lead the client the right way, so you can have them be on the same page with them, and so that you can make sure that in what you do in the moment is not based on the biggest button that's right there, or the last webinar you were on, or the last blog that you read, but you're actually going somewhere. So I'm not a big fan of spending weeks and weeks to write a strategy, any type of marketing strategy, particularly something like PPC where you need to be flexible. Why spend weeks writing it? Why write this long memo or write this long deck for a strategy that's going to change week by week, experiment by experiment? Instead, I'm really a fan of a one-page soup to nuts AdWords strategy. So if you are interested in having getting a one-page strategy, you can actually find it on my website, hookandtarget.com/ACE. So I'm going to have this video up there, and also I'll have something where you can download the same exact one-pager template that I use to create AdWords campaigns, to create content marketing campaigns, to create ads, anything that has to do with marketing that demands a strategy. I write it on this one-page strategic document. I'm able to share it. I'm able to get feedback on it. I'm able to kind of hold myself to this original strategic thinking, even when I just want to go off the rails and test some wild idea that I saw someone mention in a PPC's chat yesterday. So go check it out. Again, it's hookandtarget.com/ACE for ACE. You can see it on your screen right here. And also you can use that website to ask me any questions that you have about ACE with what your goals are and what you're trying to do with it. Thanks, guys, for your time today. I hope you have a great day. Thank you.